Rikers Island is a lonely, cold, dreaded, suffocating, dangerous, an evil place stuck in time. The women of Rikers have their own special kind of hell. There are between 300 to 500 women detainees, depending on weekly operational traffic. Women in Rikers face violence, mistreatment by guards, inadequate health care, and rapid SA. Over 80% of the women in Rikers are mothers and the primary caregiver. Not only do they have to navigate parenting, but their own survival from inside. Women face a range of mental health concerns and issues. Women inmates enter Rikers dealing with depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder to substance abuse. Women report being victims of partner domestic abuse, child abuse, and sexual abuse trauma. In direct connection with Rikers, there is 82% of women who receive a Brad H mental health designation. Lots of women inmates at Rikers need substance treatment, which is unmet before release. This factor increases challenges managing their mental illness and living a stable, productive lifestyle. The violent, turbulent environment at Rikers increase the risk of being re-traumatized due to the high probability of sexual abuse while inside. Women make up only 7% of prison population, but a staggering 66% of women reported having a history of mental disorder, twice the percentage of men in prison. 4 nurses from the New York State Nurses Association, with a combined 75 years of work at the facility, speak on the serious issues plaguing the women of Rikers. Paulette McGee, RN, stated, "I see lost souls." Nurse McGee has worked at Rikers for 21 years, with the recent 8 years in mental health. She states, "The system has failed them. We help them to gain insight into their illness and medication compliance. But when they leave, they say they have nothing to go home to." Nurse Constance Clark, RN, states, "They are the forgotten ones." Nurse Clark has worked at Rikers for 12 years. Rikers is in a state of utter confusion, according to Nurse Clark. The facility suffers from serious understaffing in all departments. Detainees arrive at intake and are lost for 2 to 3 days. When identified as mentally ill, they become our patients, but they are sometimes put into general population where they can become violent or become victims of violence. Nurse Nadine Presley, RN, states, "It is not easy." Nurse Presley has worked at Rikers for 13 years. She spent much of the time in intake clinics, but transferred to URGI care in the West facility. The unit treats wounds, injuries, and lacerations that cannot be treated in the building where detainees are housed. The unit treats C-19 patients as well. Nurse Presley states there is nowhere to isolate those patients, and they are sent back to housing. Then we see more positives and more patients. There is a lack of corrections officers to isolate them, and a rise in arrest contributes. There is a staffing issue across the board. To me, it feels unsafe and out of control. Jean Thomas, RN, states, "There are not enough of us to keep up with the need." Nurse Thomas states detainees who arrive at Rikers sometimes have wait times on the prison bus from 3 to 5 hours. Some need immediate detox or insulin. The holding area has common stays for 4 to 5 days, and they are packed in like sardines. There is a serious overcrowding issue to the point some detainees circumvent the medical clinic. If medical evaluations are missed, medical staff have no idea what inmates need. Due to the volume, at times inmates are left unattended without security to roam about, picking up the telephone. This behavior poses a threat, and we feel unsafe. Women face a lack of adequate health care in Rikers, from a lack of feminine products all the way to not being screened for chronic illnesses. The Department of Correction is required to conduct mandatory testing for chronic health conditions under city law. Neglect is a huge problem at Rikers Island. 31-year-old inmate Mary Yehudah was not screened for diabetes when she arrived at Rikers on February 2nd, 2022. For over 3 months, Mary complained of heart palpitations, shortness of breath, high blood pressure, and dental issues. Those issues could indicate a person is diabetic. Mary died on May 18, 2022. A review of her medical records indicates Correctional Health Services never diagnosed her with diabetes. Also, the correctional officers in Yehudah's housing unit were not at their post. They were not completing their mandatory half-hourly tours of the facility when she was found unresponsive. On May 17th, COs saw Yehudah in her cell at the Rose M. Singer Center at around 7:30 a.m. COs waited a full hour and a half before conducting a check that should be every 30 minutes. Mary was found in her cell suffering from cardiac arrest and sepsis due to diabetic ketoacidosis. Ketoacidosis is a life-threatening condition that takes place when the body does not produce enough insulin. When she was found, they administered 2 doses of Narcan to revive her before taking her to Amherst Hospital. However, she was not intoxicated with any drugs, according to her toxicology screen. The next morning at 5 a.m., Mary Yehudah was pronounced dead at Amherst Hospital. The neglect from the entire DOC led to Mary's death. Pregnant inmates suffer from insufficient prenatal care. Long waits, short staffing, and simple neglect can lead to devastating traumatic consequences for both mother and child. Pregnant inmates experience inhumane treatment such as invasive searches, verbal abuse, inadequate nutrition, limited fresh air, and the risk of being shackled during labor and after childbirth. Women inmates are subjected to violence and sexual abuse inside Rikers. There have been females jumped by other female inmates, including gang members, inside of the women's facility. Viktoriya Nasyrova was brutally attacked by 4 gang members. Understaffing continues to be a problem at Rikers and was a factor in Viktoriya's savage beating. Nasyrova was punched, kicked, dragged, bloodied, and partially blinded. The lone female CO didn't have backup to help stop the assault. Viktoriya was successful suing the city of New York for $325,000.
So we've been reporting on this a lot. You've likely heard about the jail staffing crisis on Rikers Island. Tonight, the I-Team is taking us behind bars to show us the consequences. Exclusive video showing an overwhelmed corrections officer helpless to stop a vicious attack, a gang attack. As Chris Glorioso reports, she waited for minutes with no backup while a detainee was bloodied and blinded.
You are looking at exclusive video of a 2018 gang assault in the showers at a Rikers Island women's jail. The corrections officer trying to break it up is outnumbered by herself with chemical spray malfunctioning.
4 inmates jumped me. They kicked me. I was on the floor.
Viktoriya Nasyrova is the detainee being beaten, kicked, and dragged on the floor. Based on this video, she sued, and last month the city settled for $325,000. The Corrections Department admitted no wrongdoing, but the video shows an emergency response team arriving too late, only after Nasyrova was bleeding and partially blinded on the jail floor.
Was there any way that one corrections officer was going to stop that situation?
I don't think so.
Nasyrova blames her injuries on understaffing at Rikers Island, and she says during the pandemic, staffing conditions have gotten even worse. According to Corrections Brass, on one day in mid-August, nearly 1,800 of the more than 8,300 officers were no-shows. That's 20% of all the officers assigned to Rikers.
We have 2,795 times in the month of August people didn't call and didn't come to work.
COs are allowed to take nearly unlimited sick days, but the president of the union representing jail captains said sick leave is not being abused. He blames new policies that limit solitary confinement and the use of force against violent inmates.
You could be fighting for 10, 15 minutes before help comes because they don't have the staff.
Female inmates have experienced widespread and persistent sexual violence at Rikers Island. At the Rose M. Singer Center, or Rosie's as it's called. The facility is partially closed. At research, it was reported that a housing unit in the RMSC is being used to house male detainees and is referred to as Resh Annex. The Adult Survivors Act was passed into the Senate in April 2025 and the Assembly in May 2022 for the states of California and New York. The act was signed into law by Governor Kathy Hochul on May 24, 2022 for New York. The New York period was between November 24, 2022 to November 24, 2023. The California version has a 3-year window from January 1st to 2023 to December 31st, 2026. California laws cover acts committed on January 1st, 2009 and after that was previously time barred. In New York, the act allowed people 18 or over at the time of sexual abuse to file a civil lawsuit against their abusers regardless of the statute of limitations. Out of the more than 2,500 lawsuits filed, almost 700 were filed by former women inmates of Rikers. There were 674 confirmed at research.
1-year look-back window that the bill established ends on November 23rd. And at that point, anyone who has not yet filed a case will have missed that opportunity.
An astonishing 719 sexual assault lawsuits have been filed against the Department of Correction by female inmates alleging a pattern of abuse that goes back decades. CBS 2 political reporter Marsha Kramer spoke with one woman who says that she was abused multiple times in the 33 days that she spent at Rikers on a DUI charge. We do want to warn you, some of you may find the details of this case graphic.
From the air, Rikers Island looks like a jail, but it became a chamber of horrors for a woman named Jenny, who says she was sexually abused multiple times by correction officers while she was locked up on a drunk driving charge.
They asked me to do most of the time oral sex or masturbation.
And how did that make you feel?
It was the scariest experience I've ever had in my life. It made me feel ashamed of myself.
Jenny is one of over 700 women who have filed suit against the Department of Correction, charges that in some cases go back decades. Anna Cull is her lawyer.
Jenny was in Rikers for only about 33 days. During that very short time period, she was abused approximately 6 times by several officers.
The suits were filed under the Adult Survivors Act, signed by Governor Hochul, that gave victims of sexual abuse a one-year window to bring charges.
What was the abuse?
Everything you can think of, Marcia. Truly horrific things. We have instances where women became impregnated and either suffered, medical complications like ectopic pregnancies or had to undergo abortions.
The suits are seeking over $14 billion in damages, which is more than 3 times what the city has spent on the migrant crisis. The lawyers also want the city to remove correction officers who still work on Rikers. Jenny has something to say to her tormentors.
You need help because you come from a mother, and, no woman deserves to be treated this way.
In addition to the Rikers suits, over 2,000 women held at other New York jails are seeking damages. I'm Marcia Kramer, CBS 2 News.
Now, the mayor said he was shocked at the revelations and called for a complete investigation. A spokesperson for the Department of Corrections said that it was trying to improve, quote, the way we manage sexual misconduct cases.
Survivors called it an opportunity to finally be heard. Alexandra Johnson, now 35, recalls details of being sexually assaulted while incarcerated at Rikers. She also alleges she was raped at Rikers and Bedford Hills facility. The Bedford assault led to the loss of her unborn baby Marcus. Alexandra sued New York City and the State of Corrections Department.
Since all this has happened, I don't feel that big hole in me anymore because this is helping so much, I think it's not just my story being told. Marcus has a story too. Justice and this not happening anymore to females, them going in and having a chance to come out and, bettering their life, and being in there, it's not easy. And then when you're raped over and over and over and over again, and the people that you're supposed to look up to as an authority or be safe, they take everything from you. My water broke at 11:30 at night the day after I was raped, and it took them an hour and 45 minutes. I laid down in the hospital. They did the strip test where it says your water broke, and it still took them an hour 45 minutes to call the ambulance. And it took them an hour to get into the gates. I lost Marcus at 4.5 months. And they tried covering it up. My story deserves to be told, and Marcus mostly, because I feel like he's just been forgotten. He had to die in the hospital all alone. Nothing's been done for him. No justice, no nothing. They just keep getting away with things. I have to keep going forward, with this because it matters. And it matters however many other women come forward, because something's got to happen here. There's so many stories, so many, not just mine, that these women are abused brutally.
And the now 719 lawsuits filed, they name current and past employees of Rikers. Attorney Anna Cole stated she filed hundreds of civil cases related to reports of assault behind bars under the Adult Survivors Act. It is a systematic failure when over 200 women were sexually abused at Rikers. Attorney Adam Slater confirmed his firm, Slater and Shloman, LLP, has filed 481 lawsuits against the city regarding Rikers' only women's facility, the Rose M. Singer Center, also known as Rosie's. Slater states prison culture attracts sexual predators where there is an extreme power imbalance. Cheyenne, now 40, is one of Cole's clients. Cheyenne spent time at Rikers when she was 19 years old and housed there Rosie's. Shananye State's corrections officer took her to a bathroom, groped her, and made her perform oral sex. She tried fighting him off, but was reprimanded for assaulting an officer and placed in the box for a year. Shananye told her story, fighting back tears. He would taunt me for weeks, telling me if I reported it, no one would believe me. I couldn't tell the therapist because they work for the jail. They just look at you as an inmate with no word, no honor. Miss Tammy, now 60, who is represented by attorney Cole, was incarcerated at Rosie's for 30 days. In her 30-day stay, she was repeatedly groped and fondled by a male and female correction officer. She stated they intimidated her to keep her from reporting the abuse. Miss Tammy stated she was scared because they knew her personal information, referring to where she lived. Both Shananye and Miss Tammy found the courage to speak out in hopes that this would never happen again. However, terror has reigned on women in Rikers for many, many years. You are about to hear from Tasha, Beasley Carter, and Karen Klines, two brave women sharing their nightmare at Rikers Island by the hands of the notorious CO Champagne.
Now to an I-team investigation and a mystery on Rikers Island. Last year, former jail inmates filed hundreds of lawsuits under the Adult Survivors Act, alleging they were sexually abused or raped by jail staff. The claims are often decades old, but a cluster of those complaints centers on one correction officer in particular. Many of his accusers say they never knew his real name, but he went by a distinctive nickname. Tonight, News 4's Chris Glorioso reports on their efforts to hold this mystery officer accountable.
He didn't just do it to me. He did it to other women I don't even know.
You are looking at 18 different lawsuits from 18 former female prisoners who all say they were victims of sex crimes on Rikers Island committed by the same man.
I tried to forget you.
That man, a jail officer who has never been charged with a crime. Back in the 90s, these women say he was not known by his real name.
What did this correction officer go by? What was his nickname?
Champagne.
In their first TV interview, former inmates Karen Klines and Tasha Beasley Carter told the I-team the correction officer nicknamed Champagne repeatedly forced them into sex acts. Their stories hard to hear and similar to a slew of other plaintiffs who also named CO Champagne in their lawsuits, alleging he sexually abused or raped them while they were in and out of Rikers Island, mostly on non-violent drug offenses, back during the war on crack.
And at that time we were there, don't you know it was a beauty pageant? All the pretty girls you could think of was in jail. And they swept us in there and then gave us no healing and gave us nothing else but dirty slop sinks to perform sexual acts in.
Karen Klines says she was violated by the officer known as Champagne more than 10 times between 1999 and 2000. She says she reported the abuse, but was ignored by jail brass.
I went there because I was on crack cocaine and I wanted some help. But instead, I wasn't. I was raped.
The publication Gothamist was first to reveal the cluster of lawsuits against the jail officer known as Champagne. Gothamist reported contacting a retired New York City CO now living in Pennsylvania, who said he did use that nickname, but he denied improper sexual activity with any prisoner. Attorneys representing Klines and Beasley Carter are now calling on the Bronx DA to file criminal charges against the retired officer.
He, unfortunately, is just one example of the rampant sexual abuse that was going on there because nothing ever happened to these guys. There were no ramifications.
The I-team reached out to the New York City Department of Correction to ask about any internal investigation that may have followed the rape complaint Karen Klines says she made. The department said it does not comment on pending litigation.
No one cared. No one cared.
Because if they cared, they would have been doing a thorough investigation when such allegations was made.
Now that several decades have passed since the alleged sex crimes at Rikers, some of the allegations are time barred. But a spokesperson for the Bronx DA said, "We have been reviewing numerous Adult Survivors Act lawsuits to determine if the allegations fall within the statute of limitations and if criminal charges can be brought."
Are you both willing to tell your story to the DA?
Yes, absolutely.
And if he is not brought up on criminal charges, shame on this state, this city.
The I-Team reached out to the retired jail officer who told Gothamist he went by the name Champagne. He did not get back to us, but the union representing correction officers said he vigorously disputes the sex crime allegations and that union stands by him, quote, 100%. Chris Glorioso, News 4.
$2,019,900 women are jailed each year in the U.S., and 80% are mothers. Most of the inmates in jail, including mothers, are awaiting trial who couldn't make bail. Many of these women are incarcerated for drug and property offenses, often stemming from poverty and or substance abuse. The ladies are also the primary caretakers of their children, which presents difficulty in providing for them from inside. The punishment of incarceration tears their children away from vital support. A lot of the women are also dealing with incarcerated fathers of the children as well. These numbers don't cover the female inmates who are about to become mothers. An estimated 58,000 pregnant female inmates are admitted to U.S. jails and prisons annually. There are harsh conditions inside of Rikers, and pregnant inmates face incredible challenges and incorporate specific services. At Rose M. Singer Center, the implementation of family planning services and the presence of a jail-based nursery did allow mothers to care for their infants. However, there are challenges and barriers presented to mothers who give birth inside of Rikers. Disrupted access to contraception upon release and difficulties with reapplying for insurance, suffering from traumatic experience when inside, reporting dehumanizing treatment such as being denied needed prenatal care, being subjected to invasive searches, and the lack of regard for the condition from correctional officers. After giving birth, mothers are allowed 24 hours with their newborns in the hospital. The mothers are returned to jail. The infants are then turned over to family members for care until the mother is released. If that's not a possibility, the babies are placed into foster care. After the mothers are released, they are reunited with the babies according to certain conditions and terms and certain criteria that need to be met. In 2021, New York Governor Kathy Hochul and NYC Mayor Bill de Blasio agreed to move 200 women and trans-identified incarcerated individuals to other state facilities from Rikers Island for safety purposes. This was a one-time occurrence. Women of the facility actually signed a petition to halt the transfer to state penitentiaries. They felt that it was an attempt to keep them quiet, to silence them. They wondered what was the emergency now to all of a sudden move us. They felt it was strictly politically driven and not really in their best interests. Due to the number of deaths in a short period of time, stabbings, and prisoner injuries, as of May 2025, Rikers was placed under federal receivership. The cry for the closure of the facility and system reform was heard and answered. Rikers Island will close in 2027. New facilities will be built in Queens, Manhattan, Brooklyn, and the Bronx. Once these institutions are completed, all of Rikers inmates will be moved. New buildings with better living conditions are a starting point, but it's the culture that must change. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss any uploads. Thank you, and take care of yourself and each other.